The forest was still. Not just quiet, but dead still. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, like the earth itself is holding its breath. Then, it happened. A bark. Sudden. Sharp. Desperate. Bear had never barked like this before. He stood frozen, eyes locked on something no one else could see. Then, without warning, he lunged toward the twisted roots of a gnarled old tree. Not to chase. Not to play. But to dig, like his life depended on it. Bear wasn't just any dog. He was a veteran. A military K-9 with years of frontline service. Trained to detect danger. To save lives. To find what others couldn't. After retirement, he'd been living peacefully with his handler, tucked away on the edge of Black Hollow Forest. But that day, Bear wasn't just barking. He was warning. Locals called the tree the Widow's Watcher. A cursed place. People avoided it. Said it was haunted. Said it watched you back. Over the years, hikers had vanished nearby. No one ever found out why. Until Bear started digging. What he uncovered that day wasn't just dirt or decay. It was a secret buried for years. A piece of evidence. A thread, tangled in a story no one wanted to remember. Some say it was an accident. Others say it was fate. But one thing was certain. This dog had just uncovered something that would shake the town to its core. And it all started with a bark. Before Bear became a neighborhood guardian, he was something far greater. A decorated military K-9, trained to detect danger before humans could even sense it. He'd served 2 tours overseas. He'd saved more soldiers than any human could count. But war changes everyone, even a dog. After his last mission, Bear came home. Scarred, silent, and different. The army said he'd done enough. They gave him a medal, a final salute, and left him in the care of an old soldier named Hank. Hank had served with Bear. He was the only one Bear ever trusted after the battlefield. They lived a quiet life in a small, wooded town. No noise. No threats. Just trees, and time. But deep in those woods, a secret had been buried for decades. Locals whispered about strange disappearances. First a child, then a teenager. But no one ever found bodies. No one ever asked questions. Some said the forest was cursed. Others stayed silent. Hank had his own suspicions. He'd seen things in war that didn't scare him. But something in that forest made his skin crawl. One evening, while walking with Bear, Hank stopped near an old oak tree. The dog froze. His ears went stiff. His nose pointed down. And then, Bear began to dig. Not like a dog chasing moles. This was frantic. Desperate. As if his instincts had awakened, not from training, but from something deeper, primal. Hank called him back. But Bear wouldn't stop. His paws hit something hard, buried beneath layers of soil and rot. It was metal. An old box. Rusted. Heavy. Hank opened it, and inside were scraps. A child's toy. A strip of torn fabric. And a photograph. Faded by time. But clearly showing a little girl, with a missing tooth and wide, innocent eyes. Hank's heart skipped. He remembered that face. She was one of the missing. That photo, it shouldn't exist. Because she was never found. No one ever recovered anything. Until now. Bear had found something that was never meant to be discovered. And that was just the beginning. The photo haunted Hank all night. He placed it on the kitchen table, but every time he looked at it, he heard the girl's laugh echoing, like it was still trapped in the woods. By morning, Hank made a decision. He took the box to the local sheriff's office. Sheriff Connolly was an old friend. Grizzled. Gruff. He'd seen too much, and said too little. When Hank slid the photo across the desk, Connolly's eyes froze. His mouth opened slightly. But no words came. Then, slowly, he leaned back in his chair, and locked the office door. "What you found," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "was supposed to stay buried." Hank didn't flinch. "Why?" Connolly shook his head. "Because this town, it protects its own secrets." He pulled out an old file. It was dusty, yellowed with age, stamped, closed, no evidence. Inside, newspaper clippings, missing posters, and one word, scribbled again and again on the margins. Lost. Hank turned the pages. All young victims. All gone without a trace. But the town never held a funeral. No families ever moved. It was like the kids had never existed. Bear lay at Hank's feet, alert. Eyes fixed on the sheriff. Connolly leaned forward. There was a man, 20 years ago. A suspect. He owned land near those woods. Reclusive. Strange. But before we could question him, he disappeared. No body. No trail. The sheriff's voice dropped. Some say he still lives out there. Watching. Waiting. Hank clenched his fists. The box. The girl. The whispers in the forest. This wasn't over. When he left the station, the air felt colder. People on the street gave him strange looks. Curtains twitched. Doors locked quietly behind him. The town had turned. But Bear had turned too. That night, Bear wouldn't eat. Wouldn't sleep. He sat by the door, eyes fixed on the woods. He was waiting. For something, or someone. And deep in the trees, where the light never touched the ground, a shadow moved. The past wasn't buried. It had been watching. Waiting for someone to come close. And now, Bear had found it. But the truth? The real truth? It hadn't even begun to bleed yet. The next morning, Hank packed a flashlight, a compass, and the photo of the girl. He didn't say a word to anyone, just clipped Bear's leash, nodded once, and started walking. The forest greeted them like a memory. Familiar. But different. The trail seemed narrower. The trees leaned in. And the silence? It was too still, like the woods were holding their breath. Every few steps, Bear would pause, ears perked, nose to the wind. Something was near. They passed the old well. The collapsed shed. The rusted tricycle, still lying where time forgot. And then, the scent changed. Bear stopped. Stiff. Growling low. Ahead, the path bent sharply, revealing a clearing neither of them remembered. In the center. A cabin. Half buried in vines, like the forest had tried to erase it. Its door swung gently on broken hinges. No footprints in the dirt. No smoke from the chimney. But something inside was awake. Hank whispered, "Stay." Bear didn't move. He stepped forward, flashlight in one hand, heart pounding in his throat. With each creak of the floorboards, the tension thickened. Inside, the air was damp. Old newspapers lined the walls. Every headline was the same. Missing child. And in the center of the room, a wall of photos. Dozens of them. Boys. Girls. Smiling. Laughing. Until one face stopped him cold. The girl from the box. Same smile. Same red dress. But in this photo, she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a man. Face half hidden in shadow. Hand resting on her shoulder. Suddenly, Bear barked, sharp and loud, from outside. Then silence. Hank turned and bolted out the door. But Bear was gone. No paw prints. No sound. Just the whispering wind in the trees. Hank called his name. Once. Twice. Nothing. Then, from deep within the forest. A sound. Not footsteps. Not growling. Laughter. A child's laughter. High. Hollow. Echoing. Hank's breath caught. This wasn't just a mystery. It wasn't just about a lost girl. Something was playing with them. Something that knew he was watching. And it had taken Bear. The forest grew darker as Hank ran. He didn't know where he was going anymore, just that he had to find Bear. His voice cracked as he called out into the silence. But there was no answer. Only the rustling of unseen things. And then, a twig snapped behind him. He spun around, flashlight trembling in his hand. And there, out of the shadows, came Bear. But something was off. He wasn't running like he always did. No tail wagging. No bark. Just slow, deliberate steps. His fur was damp. Matted with something dark. And his eyes. They weren't the same. They didn't sparkle. They didn't recognize Hank. They just stared. Unblinking. Cold. Hank knelt down, whispering, "Bear, buddy, it's me." But Bear didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't make a sound. Then, suddenly, he turned and started walking away. Back into the forest. Hank followed, heart pounding. Where are you going? Where were you? But Bear never looked back. He led Hank deeper than they had ever gone. Past trees that didn't belong. Roots twisted like veins. Bark carved with symbols Hank couldn't read. The air grew thick. Hard to breathe. It felt like the trees were closing in. Then, Bear stopped. They were in another clearing. Circular. Perfect. And in the middle, a single grave. Fresh. Marked only by a child's doll. Its eyes missing. Bear sat beside it. Still. Silent. Hank stepped closer, knees shaking, whispering, "What is this?" But he didn't get to finish. Because behind him, a branch snapped. And the same laughter he'd heard before. That hollow, haunting child's laugh. Echoed all around him. But louder now. Closer. Bear didn't flinch. Didn't move. And in that moment, Hank realized something horrifying. Bear hadn't just been taken. He had been shown something. Something he couldn't unsee. Something that had changed him forever. Whatever Bear had faced in those woods, he had come back with a piece of it still inside him. Hank didn't sleep that night. Not after what he saw in Bear's eyes. The dog lay curled at the door, facing the forest, unmoving, like a silent guardian, or a warning. Inside the cabin, Hank lit the old fireplace for the first time. The heat barely touched the chill that had settled into his bones. He needed answers. And answers came, from the most unexpected place. Under a loose floorboard near the hearth, Hank found it, wrapped in decaying cloth, bound with a ribbon no longer red, but stained brown. It was a journal. Small. Leather-bound. Belonging to the missing girl, Emily. His hands trembled as he opened it. The first page was innocent. Crude drawings. A sketch of a dog that looked eerily like Bear. Then, the handwriting changed. The words became frantic. Disjointed. Sentences trailed off. Pages were torn. But one entry stood out. "There's someone else here. He calls me at night. Not with words, but with humming. I don't like the songs. They make my head hurt. But I can't stop listening." Another page. "The tree behind the cabin, it opens. But only when I'm alone. I think something lives inside it." And then, the most terrifying line of all, scrawled at the edge of a page, pressed so deep it tore through the paper. "If you find this, don't trust the dog." Hank froze. He looked toward Bear, still at the door. Still not blinking. A cold sweat trickled down his neck. What had this girl gone through? What had she seen? The journal ended abruptly. No goodbye. No final message. Just a crude drawing, of a tree with a hollow trunk. And inside it, 2 eyes. Watching. Hank backed away, clutching the journal to his chest. He thought about everything Bear had done since returning. The silence. The distant eyes. The refusal to come near the tree. Was he trying to protect Hank? Or, was he leading him to it? Outside, the wind howled louder. A low hum started in the distance. Not the wind. Not an animal. A melody. Faint. Childlike. Exactly like the girl had written. And Bear, for the first time in hours, stood up. The wind had changed that morning. It carried a strange scent, damp earth mixed with something older. Something forgotten. Bear stood motionless near the tree. That same tree where he had barked weeks ago. Now, he simply stared at it. Quiet. Alert. Hank felt it too. A strange chill traveled down his spine. He walked toward the tree, flashlight in hand, even though it was daylight. The closer he got, the heavier the silence became. It wasn't natural. Suddenly, Bear growled. Low. Warning. Protective. Then, he started digging. Same spot. Same tree. Hank knelt beside him, hands trembling. He reached into the soil, now looser than before, as if something beneath was waiting. A hollow thump echoed as Hank's hand struck wood. He froze. A box. No, a door. A trapdoor, right under the roots. It had hinges rusted by time and secrets. Hank looked at Bear. The dog didn't move. Just watched him, eyes locked, almost pleading. Should I open it, boy? Hank whispered. Bear gave one single bark. Then silence. With great effort, Hank pried open the hatch. Darkness gaped below. A ladder descended into the earth. Old. Wooden. Dusty. The smell that rose up was ancient. He turned on his flashlight. The beam cut through thick cobwebs and shadows. He hesitated. But something told him, he had to go down. Now. Step by step, he climbed into the unknown. Bear stayed above, pacing, guarding. Each creak of the ladder echoed like a warning. At the bottom, Hank's feet hit stone. A corridor stretched out before him, carved into the earth. The walls were lined with old nails, pieces of clothing, scribbles. Scribbles from a child's hand. He aimed the flashlight forward. And then, he saw it. On the wall, painted in dried red, were the same initials from the journal. E.A. Emma Andrews. The missing girl. Hank's voice cracked. She was here. His knees buckled. A wave of dread washed over him. But then, he heard something behind him. A breath? A whisper? No, footsteps. Fast. Above him. He spun around, shining his light toward the ladder. Bear, he shouted. No reply. Only the creaking of the hatch slowly closing. The rain had stopped. But the air still carried weight. Like the world itself was holding its breath. Bear stood motionless by the old shack, his ears high, body tense. His breathing was calm, but his instincts screamed. Inside that rundown cabin, something wasn't right. Detective Marla stepped in cautiously, her flashlight sweeping across broken floorboards and dusty shelves. The place had been abandoned for years, or so everyone thought. Then they found it. A trapdoor. Hidden beneath a loose rug. A chain latch rusted with time. Bear circled it, growling low, his body shaking. With a deep breath, Marla pulled the door open. The stench was immediate. It wasn't just dirt or decay, it was grief, horror, and silence that had lived there too long. The flashlight's beam caught the stairs, leading down into darkness. Each step creaked under their weight as they descended into the unknown. Bear took the lead, steady and sure. The basement walls were lined with boxes, old photos, and files, dozens of them. Victims. Dates. Names. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a chamber of truth. Of horror. Of something much worse. Marla picked up one of the files. Her eyes widened. Her own brother's name was on it. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "He knew all along. He was trying to find this place." Bear pawed at another box, scratching furiously. Inside was a recording device. They played it. And the voice echoed through the basement. It was the killer. Calm. Cold. Calculated. "I knew someone would find this, eventually. If you're hearing this, then the dog beat me." The voice chuckled darkly. "But the question is, are you ready for what comes next?" Then the tape went silent. Marla looked at Bear. He didn't bark. He just stared. As if he knew. This was far from over. Sometimes, heroes don't wear badges. Sometimes, they don't speak our language. Sometimes, they walk on four legs. And carry the weight of our darkest truths in silence. Bear wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian. A witness. A fighter who never gave up, even when the world turned away. And now. The question is not what Bear found that night. But what he saved us from. If this story moved you. If it made your heart race. If you believe dogs like Bear deserve to be remembered. Then show it. Like this video if you felt the weight of his courage. Comment below with one word, Bear. Let's make his name echo across the world. Let the world know. Real heroes still exist. And if you're new here, subscribe to K9 Miracles Stories. Where truth howls louder than fear. Where every dog has a voice. And every silence has a story. Because this was just the beginning.